Caesar is going to submit all the local tribes. It seems Cassivellaunus is still doing resistance. Let us see what Caesar's strategy is going to be this time. Don't forget to subscribe before starting. Now, after securing the Trinovantes and preventing any harm to them from his soldiers, the Cenomagni, Saguntiati, and Colites, Bibrosi, and Cassi also sent envoys and submitted to Caesar. From them, Caesar learned that Cassivellaunus had a fortified town nearby, protected by forests and marshes, where a large number of people and cattle had gathered. The Britons referred to this as a town when they fortified a forest with a rampart and ditch to avoid enemy raids. Caesar set out with his legions and found the place well defended by nature and fortifications. He attacked from two sides, but the enemy, after a brief resistance, could not withstand the Romans' assault and fled to the other side of the town. A large number of cattle and many fugitives were captured or killed. While these events were occurring, Cassivellaunus sent messengers to Kent, as previously mentioned, a coastal region governed by 4 kings: Cingetorix, Carvilius, Taximagulus, and Segovax. He ordered them to gather all their forces and suddenly attack and assault the naval camp. When they reached the camp, our forces made a sortie, killed many of the enemy, captured their leader Lugatorix, and returned safely to the camp. Hearing of this battle and realizing the losses he had suffered, the devastation of his lands, and the defection of many tribes, Cassivellaunus, deeply troubled, sent envoys through the Aedrabate Commius to negotiate surrender with Caesar. Caesar, planning to winter on the continent due to sudden unrest in Gaul, and knowing that little summer remained, realized that it would be easy to extend his campaign. He demanded hostages, decided on the annual tribute that Britain would pay to Rome, and forbade Cassivellaunus from harming Mandubratius and the Trinovantes. After receiving the hostages, Caesar led his army back to the coast and found his ships repaired. Given the large number of captives and the loss of some ships to storms, he decided to transport his army back in 2 trips. It so happened that, despite the great number of ships and numerous voyages, not a single ship carrying soldiers was lost in either this or the previous year. However, of those that returned empty from the continent after unloading the soldiers or those that Labienus had built, few reached their destination, while most were driven back. After waiting in vain for some time, and not wanting to be excluded from sailing due to the season's timing, as the equinox was approaching, Caesar packed his soldiers into a smaller number of ships. Setting sail at the start of the 2nd watch, he reached the mainland at dawn, bringing all the ships safely to port. After beaching his ships and conducting a meeting of the Gauls at Samarabreva, Caesar, due to a poor grain harvest caused by droughts in Gaul, was forced to quarter his army differently than in previous years and distribute the legions across several tribes. He sent 1 legion to the Morini under Gaius Fabius, another to the Nervi under Quintus Cicero, a 3rd to the Isubi under Lucius Ratius, and a 4th to the Remi near the borders of the Treveri with Titus Labienus. He stationed 3 legions among the Belgae, with Marcus Crassus as quaestor and Lucius Munatius Plancus and Gaius Trebonius as legates. He sent 1 legion, recently recruited from across the Po River, and 5 cohorts into the territory of the Eburones, which lies between the Meuse and the Rhine, under the rule of Ambiorix and Catuvolcus. He ordered Quintus Titurius Sabinus and Lucius Aurunculeius Cotta to command these troops. By distributing the legions in this way, he believed he could easily address the grain shortage. Despite this, all the legions' winter quarters, except for the one under Lucius Ratius in the most peaceful and quiet region, were within 100 miles. Meanwhile, Caesar decided to stay in Gaul until he knew the legions were settled and the winter quarters fortified. In the territory of the Carnutes, there was a man of high rank named Teschius, whose ancestors had ruled the tribe. Caesar restored him to his ancestral position due to his exceptional valor and loyalty, which he had demonstrated in all the wars. Now in his 3rd year of rule, Teschius was killed by his enemies, encouraged openly by many in the tribe. This news was brought to Caesar. Fearing that the incident might incite a wider rebellion, Caesar ordered Lucius Plancus to quickly march to the Carnutes with his legion from Belgica, winter there, and sent to him those responsible for Tatidius's murder. Meanwhile, he received reports from all his legates and quaestors that they had reached their winter quarters and fortified their positions. About 15 days after the legions had settled in winter quarters, a sudden uprising and revolt broke out, led by Ambiorix and Cassivellaunus. Having met Sabinus and Cotta at the borders of their territory and delivered grain to the winter quarters, they were incited by Indutiomarus of the Treveri and assembled their men, suddenly attacking the camp with a large force. Our troops quickly armed themselves, manned the ramparts, and, with the Spanish cavalry sallying out from one side, won a cavalry battle. Seeing their attack fail, the enemy withdrew their forces. Following their custom, they called out for someone from our side to come forward for a conference, claiming they had things to discuss regarding the general situation, hoping to resolve the conflict. Gaius Arpinius, a Roman knight and close associate of Quintus Titurius and Quintus Junius, who had previously been sent by Caesar to Ambiorix and had become familiar with him, were sent to negotiate. Ambiorix spoke to them, expressing his gratitude to Caesar for freeing him from tribute to the Aduatuci, his neighboring tribe, and for returning his son and nephew, who had been held in chains by the Aduatuci. He claimed he had not acted out of personal will or judgment, but under compulsion from his tribe, which had as much authority over him as he did over them. He explained that the cause of the war was the sudden conspiracy of the Gauls, which he could not resist. He asserted that he was not so ignorant as to believe he could defeat the Roman people with his forces alone. Instead, it was a collective decision of Gaul to attack all of Caesar's winter quarters simultaneously, ensuring no legion could aid another. Given his loyalty to Caesar, he now advised and pleaded with Titurius to consider his and his soldiers' safety. He warned that a large force of Germans had crossed the Rhine and would arrive in 2 days. They should decide whether to lead their troops out of winter quarters before their neighbors became aware, either to Cicero or Labienus, both of whom were within about 50 miles. He pledged and confirmed under oath that he would provide a safe passage through his territory. In doing so, he would also benefit his tribe by freeing them from the burden of the winter quarters and show his gratitude to Caesar. After delivering this speech, Ambiorix departed. Arpinius and Junius reported what they had heard to the legates. Disturbed by the suddenness of the situation, they thought it unwise to ignore the message, even though it came from the enemy. They were especially concerned because it seemed hardly credible that an insignificant and lowly tribe like the Eburones would dare to make war on the Roman people on their own initiative. They brought the matter to a council, where a great controversy arose among them. Lucius Aurunculeius and several military tribunes and centurions of the first rank believed nothing should be done hastily, and that they should not leave their winter quarters without Caesar's orders. They argued that they could withstand any large enemy forces, including the Germans, in their fortified winter quarters. They cited the example of having repelled the enemy's first attack with many inflicted wounds. They were not in need of supplies, and aid would arrive from the nearest winter quarters and from Caesar. Finally, they argued that it would be most foolish and disgraceful to take counsel on critical matters based on the enemy's suggestion. After having submitted the Britons, new challenges are coming from the Gauls. It seems the Gallic Wars will continue for a while. You have no choice but subscribe to the channel and go for the next video. See you soon.